The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and crimson as her bride stood in front of the mirror, her heart racing with excitement and joy. Amina had dreamt of this day for as long as she could remember. She had planned every detail of her wedding with precision. The traditional attire of beads, the rich fabric of her dress, the fragrant scent of flowers that filled the air. It was all perfect. But there was something, or rather, someone who had always been by her side since childhood. Someone she trusted with her entire soul. That person was Lindiwe, her best friend, the sister she never had. But as Amina gazed at herself in the mirror, adorned in the finest garments, she couldn't help but feel an uneasy stirring in her chest. Lindiwe had always been the center of Amina's life, a confidant, the one she called in times of joy and pain. But today, something fell off. The laughter in Lindiwe's voice when she complimented Amina's beauty seemed distant, too rehearsed. Amina shook the thought away, telling herself it was just nerves. She had come a long way from the small village where they grew up, and now she was about to marry the love of her life, Adebayo. She was happy. Everything was going according to plan. Or so she thought. The wedding ceremony was a dream. The village chief performed the rites, the elders blessed their union, and the air was filled with joy and the sound of drums. But as Amina stood next to Adebayo, gazing into his eyes, she noticed something, a subtle exchange between Lindiwe and Adebayo, a look, a smile that lingered a little too long. It was almost imperceptible, but Amina's gut twisted in that moment. She tried to ignore it, to push it aside, but the thought gnawed at her, refusing to let go. The reception was a blur, a flurry of faces, laughter, and celebration. But Amina could hardly focus. Her mind kept drifting back to that moment during the ceremony. What had happened between Lindiwe and Adebayo? Was it just her imagination running wild, or had something sinister taken root in the heart of the celebration? Her thoughts were interrupted when she caught sight of Lindiwe, who seemed to be watching her with a strange intensity, a look that was almost predatory. Amina's heart sank, but she forced a smile, trying to push away the unease. That night, after the wedding, the couple retreated to their new home, a beautiful house nestled on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by lush trees and the sounds of nature. The evening air was cool and the stars shone brightly in the sky. But when Amina stepped through the door, she was met with a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. Something felt wrong. Adebayo tried to ease her nerves, lighting candles and playing their favorite music, but it didn't work. The oppressive feeling only deepened. It was then that the first strange thing happened. Amina walked into the living room and found a mirror on the floor, shattered into pieces. She was sure she had left it on the wall earlier. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she chalked it up to exhaustion. After all, it had been a long day. But then the lights flickered, and she heard footsteps behind her. When she turned around, there was no one there. Her skin prickled with fear. This wasn't right. As she moved to the bedroom, she noticed that all the flowers she had received as gifts were wilting, their petals blackened as though they had been cursed. Adebayo, sensing her distress, tried to calm her. But deep down, Amina knew that something was very, very wrong. The next morning, the occurrences became even more bizarre. Strange sounds echoed through the house, whispers, scratching noises that seemed to come from the walls. and a cold draft that never seemed to go away. But the most terrifying thing was yet to come. When Amina awoke one morning to find a symbol drawn on the floor of their bedroom, she felt the blood drain from her face. It was an ancient symbol, one that she had only seen in old stories told by her grandmother, a symbol tied to curses and dark magic. Amina couldn't shake the feeling that the horror she was experiencing were connected to her best friend. Lindiwe had been acting strange ever since the wedding. Her eyes, once full of affection, now seemed filled with malice. It was as though she was hiding something, something dark and dangerous. And then, as if on cue, Lindiwe appeared at Amina's doorstep one afternoon, smiling as though nothing had changed. But Amina could see through the facade. Lindiwe was no longer the friend she had known. The moment she stepped inside, Amina demanded to know the truth. What had happened? Why had things taken such a twisted turn? But Lindiwe only smiled, a cold, unsettling smile, before answering with a voice full of venom. "Did you really think you could have him all to yourself?" she asked, her eyes gleaming. "Did you really think you were the only one who had a claim on Adebayo?" Amina's heart raced, but before she could respond, Lindiwe's voice dropped into a whisper. "It's too late now. The curse is already upon you. If this betrayal shocked you too, hit that like button. Trust me, it only gets worse from here. Subscribe now so you don't miss the shocking twist ahead." Amina's mind reeled. Adebayo had no idea, of course. He had been so in love, so devoted, and completely unaware of the darkness Lindiwe had been hiding. But Amina knew that the truth would come at a terrible cost. As she dove deeper into the mystery of the symbol, she found herself facing an ancient evil that had been summoned by the very friend she had trusted most. There were secrets buried in Lindiwe's past, secrets that ran deeper than bloodlines and friendships. As the days passed, Amina's life became a waking nightmare. The curse that had been cast upon her home was more than just strange occurrences and dark omens. It was a force of pure malice, one that wanted her soul. The village elders had warned her of such things. They spoke of women who, out of jealousy or spite, had turned to dark forces, and of the havoc they could wreak when they betrayed the sacred bonds of friendship. Lindiwe, it turned out, was the descendant of a long line of witches who had long been exiled from the village, but her thirst for power had led her back. She had wanted Adebayo all along and had used the wedding as the final step in her twisted plan. As the curse grew stronger, Amina realized that she had no choice but to face Lindiwe and stop her before it was too late. But the cost of doing so was unimaginable. It would mean confronting a past she never knew existed and risking everything: her love, her life, and her future with Adebayo. But Amina was determined. She would not let the darkness take her. The night before the final confrontation, Amina sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the flickering candlelight. She could feel the weight of the air pressing in on her, the walls seeming to close in, the house no longer a sanctuary but a prison. She had uncovered the truth. Lindiwe's family was bound by ancient pacts, their bloodline linked to curses older than time itself. Amina's heart felt heavy, her mind racing. She had to act fast, but as the hours ticked by, the sounds around her grew more intense. The whispers came again, like a choir of voices murmuring in the dark. She heard the distant footsteps, soft at first, then louder, closer, and more deliberate. Amina's heart leapt into her throat. This time, she was ready. With trembling hands, she picked up the charm her grandmother had given her long ago. A small warm pendant that was said to protect against evil. She clutched it tightly, feeling the weight of generations behind her. This was her heritage, her bloodline's power. It was time to use it. At the break of dawn, Amina made her way to the village elder's hut. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a faint, golden light over the horizon. The elder, an old woman with skin like bark and eyes that seemed to see everything, greeted Amina with solemn understanding. She knew why Amina had come. The curse is ancient, the elder explained, her voice soft but heavy with wisdom. But it can be broken if you are willing to sacrifice what you hold most dear. You must face Lindiwe, and you must break the bond she has with the dark forces she summoned. If you do not, you will both be consumed. Amina nodded, her resolve steely. She couldn't let this evil continue. She wouldn't let it claim her future. The final confrontation came swiftly. Lindiwe appeared as though she had been waiting for Amina all along. Her eyes gleamed with malicious joy, her lips curling into a satisfied smile. "You think you can stop me?" she mocked, stepping forward with a fluid grace. "You think you can break the curse? It's already too late." But Amina wasn't afraid anymore. She raised the pendant high, the charm glowing faintly in the early morning light. "You were my best friend," Amina said, her voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and anger. "But now, I see you for who you truly are, and I won't let your darkness take everything from me." Lindiwe's smile faltered for a brief moment, and in that instant, Amina thought a flicker of doubt in her eyes. The curse had a hold on Lindiwe too, but it was one that could be broken. The air around them thickened, the winds picking up as the ground beneath their feet trembled. The ancient symbol from Amina's bedroom began to glow with an eerie light, and the house seemed to groan as if it were alive. But Amina's grip on the pendant tightened, her voice rising in a chant taught to her by the elder. The words were unfamiliar, ancient, but they burned with power. Lindiwe screamed, a piercing sound that echoed through the empty spaces of the house. The shadows that had gathered around her began to writhe, reacting to the chant. The evil was fighting back, clawing at Amina, but she didn't falter. "You betrayed me, Lindiwe," Amina said, her voice trembling but fierce. "And now you'll have to face the consequences." In that final moment, the pendant fled with light so bright it blinded Amina for a second. When she opened her eyes, Lindiwe was gone. The evil that had haunted her home dissipated like smoke in the wind, leaving the house eerily quiet. But the damage had been done. The curse was broken, but the bond between Amina and her former best friend could never be repaired. The trust was shattered, and the friendship that once meant everything was now nothing more than a distant memory. Amina stood in the silence, the weight of the ordeal pressing on her chest. She was free, but at what cost? Her wedding day had been turned into a nightmare, and her life would never be the same again. But one thing was clear. She had survived, and with Adebayo by her side, they would rebuild what had been broken, stronger and wiser than before. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Amina felt a sense of peace wash over her. The curse was gone, and so was the darkness that had threatened to consume her. She had faced betrayal, darkness, and fear, and had emerged victorious. But as she turned to walk away from the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, Lindiwe was still watching. And as much as Amina had broken free from the curse, the memory of her best friend's betrayal would haunt her forever. If you've been shocked by this betrayal and the twist at the end, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe now so you don't miss the next shocking tale. Amina had survived, but the story didn't end there. Because in a world filled with betrayal and darkness, no one is ever truly safe.